I like to go after what our past ancestors did because physiologically and physically and biologically, we're still virtually the same as the cro-magnon, all right? And we know that the cro-magnons, they didn't have all these modern day diseases, so to speak, I mean cancer and so forth. They always moved and they ate a ton of meat and a ton of fruit or plant-based sources. I call them plant-based sources because we don't know exactly what the cro-magnon ate. If we look at hunter-gatherer tribes today, we see that they eat nuts, they eat fruits, they eat savory fruits. It doesn't have to be fructose, all right? You don't have to eat a ton of apples, let's say. You can eat a lot of tomatoes and cucumbers. Cucumbers are great because they have a lot of potassium. So you can eat a lot of cucumbers, and then you might have a couple of fruits, and that's it. A little bit of fructose so that you can train harder the next day and so forth. So we know from these studies that Cro-Magnon, they ate a ton of meat, they ate a lot of mammoth, all right? Obviously, they killed all the mammoths. They ate a ton of mammoths. We know that Neanderthals also ate this. And we know for a fact that Neanderthals ate 80% meat, animal-based protein, and also the rest, 20%, is plants. And they didn't count calories, obviously, they just hunted, they ate everything. Obviously, they wouldn't throw anything. I mean, it's the Ice Age, or if it's cold and so forth, or, you know, it's in and out of Ice Ages. We're actually in an Ice Age right now. It's just an interglacial period. That is a long period where you have warmth. And that is exactly where we're in right now. You also have to realize that some of us are more European and others are not. And the whole globe wasn't a full-on, you know, snowball. In some cases it was. I mean, in some periods it was basically a whole snowball thing, but not always. And so you gotta realize that we all adapted differently. We have some evidence that even, you know, perhaps even the Cro-Magnon, or in this era, that they ate some plants and so forth. But most of the food wouldn't be plants. If we look at Neanderthals, we know that most wasn't. We know that 80% was meat. But the Cro-Magnon, the Homo sapiens, we would have had a very similar diet, but we most likely would have been more adapted. So we would most likely, because the fact that we're even here is evidence that we're very adaptable creatures, and we have all these inner mechanisms as well. We can eat a ton of meat and still get glycogen through glyconeogenesis. That's a fantastic thing. That is evidence that we're highly adaptable. That is evidence that we can eat a ton of, if we don't have any fruit or anything else, we can eat a ton of meat and just, you know, we can survive on that as well. Or if we only have fruits, but that wouldn't happen in nature. Even if you're on an island, you don't just have fruits, you have a ton of fish. So you would have a lot of fish, you would fish, and you would also eat a ton of fruit, all right? You would eat as much as you can, as soon as you find it. So when I was in the forest today, you know, you realize that you have all this food out there. I mean, these insects, you have birds. You would think of traps to trap the birds and eat the birds and so forth. And sometimes you would perhaps get like 3 birds or 4 birds or 1 bird, and then the next day you might go for a bigger kill, and in the morning especially, and things like that, or maybe even later. I mean, they didn't go for, all right, this is the optimal. Our past ancestors didn't think like this. They didn't think like, all right, this is the optimal. We gotta do it. We gotta eat breakfast at 8 or something. Or, I mean, if they could eat in the morning, they would eat in the morning. They would eat later, and so forth. As soon as they have food, and they would eat as much as they can. Most likely, they would most likely try to save as much as they can as well. That's why we've developed, you know, smoking, curing, all these things are ways of preserving the food as long as we can. And there is a reason for this. The only bad thing comes up when we constantly eat, which we wouldn't do in nature. There would go periods where we wouldn't constantly eat or have a ton of food around, especially winter and so forth. We're from different regions. We have different peoples of different regions. The genes adapted differently depending on period. Asians started to cultivate rice and grains, and in Egypt as well, but also some parts of Africa as well. It wasn't like perfectly just Egypt and that's it. That's not how it works. It popped up, in Africa as well. So it's not like it is this linear perfect thing, which means that some Africans, they might have developed this earlier, but also there are also other factors we were not thinking of. For example, we're too clean. We're also too clean. So our stomachs lack worms. And a lot of Africans, like tribes people, like the San people, they have worms in their stomachs, and these worms, they actually digest the food, and they help them, eat this and remove the gluten and all sorts of things. And we lack this. And that is another factor we have as modern day humans. Also, of course, we have actually the environmental as well. We have a lot of pollution as well. The environment is terrible. So there are things like that also contribute to cancer and all these other things. So it's very important that we fast, that we also fast and have a proper diet. Both things. But the fasting is actually the most important, because we can get away with a lot of things if we're always fasting. We're almost always in a fasted state, which I am. I'm always fasting for 23, 22 hours, and be more according to and closer to our past ancestors in how our bodies work and in how my body works. So some things will work better for me, and then I will drop other things. The important thing is to realize that we're all different, we're all unique, and we all have our individual journey in terms of diet, fitness, mental health, and physical health. I always talk about both actually, but the fitness thing is the foundation, of course, but we also have to work with our mental health, of course. So if something is wrong, we gotta change. If something is wrong, you have to change, experiment, you try things out, you try a diet and see if that works for you. And so we're all come from different regions. I myself am mixed, so more Mediterranean, so a Mediterranean diet would work for me, but not for others, perhaps. Let's say South American, it wouldn't be as good for him. It would be perhaps pretty well, but not the best, or not, greater, not greater. There is no technically best. We are highly adaptable. We can eat a little bit of everything basically, and you could do that if you want to, but it might not be the best in terms of training either, to just have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You also want simplicity. So you want to find your simple diet. Health is the most important thing. Work on your health. Always try new things. Try things out. If it works for you, then keep it, but you got to try other things in other areas as well. You got to develop yourself fully as a full human being, not just one thing. We have multiple things in life, not just one thing. So that is what I wanted to talk about today. Individuality. All these people, they ignore the individual, they ignore individuality, the uniqueness of people. I know it's a controversial thing nowadays, but it is true. It is still truth. So it doesn't matter how controversial it is. It doesn't matter. It's still true. And so I have this diet and you have that diet and so forth. So perhaps rice works better for other people. Well, it works pretty well for me now, but let's say potatoes or something doesn't work as well for me, but for a South American, it will work better and so forth. Now, obviously I can eat this, but that's because I've healed a lot as well. So, but a lot of people out there, you haven't healed yet, you you have some issues with this or that. That's why you look at glycemic index and so forth. But most of you are just obese, and you gotta remove that first, and then you obviously try to find whatever keeps you always healthy, you know, oral health, skin health, you know, all these things. You look for all these things. You shouldn't have pimples and so forth. You should be clean and so forth. So if all that works and everything is aligned like that, then you know you have something right there. So you can always mix a little bit and change a little bit and try things out, but you will understand your own diet, and it also has to be enjoyable, but also important, efficacy and simplicity as well. Don't complicate things. All right, so, and clean food, obviously. All right, so that's what I wanted to talk about today, and I will see you in the next video.